Hi, this is a follow-up on my original video about the 80-year war cycle, and this is coming to you from the channel called War Backwards is Raw. Take the word war and spell it backwards and you get R-A-W. Drop the W and you get R-A. So Ra, R-A-W, sounds the same as Ra, the Egyptian false god. Now, war is a deception, and it's been placed upon our minds for many, many years and many, many wars. So what I'm going to do is to try to show you that basically every 80 years a war will appear in the eyes of the public. Now, it's a very clear pattern that is established right from the American Revolutionary War all the way up to the Second World War. Okay, so here we go with the 80-year war cycle, and we're going to start with the American Revolutionary War, the hoax that was placed upon the American public to make the American public believe that somehow, some miraculous way, a bunch of farmers that came over to America were released from the power of England or Great Britain. The truth of the matter is we've never been released from the power of Great Britain. Now, the Revolutionary War ends in 1781. The hostility and the fighting ends. It's really not officially over until 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. But we'll take 1781 as the end of Revolutionary War. We will add 80 years and we will come up with 1861. The Civil War hoax begins, and then 1941 would be the year of World War II. So 1781, American Revolutionary War ends. Add 80, it equals 1861. Civil War begins. And then add 80 to 1861, we get 1941 and the entrance of the United States into what we know as the Second World War. And the entrance was based upon the Pearl Harbor deception. And there are several out there with some really good videos about the Pearl Harbor deception. So the question becomes, will there be another war 80 years from 1941? So if we add 80 to 41, we get the year 2021. So every 80 years, there is war hoaxing that goes on. Now the question is, why is it every 80 years? And my initial answer is that, first of all, that's 2 generations. And when you come up with the enormous sum of money needed to finance and fight a hoax war, it places a huge sum of debt upon the land or upon the people that live in that land. And hence what it does is it puts a huge burden on the average worker to begin to pay off these war debts. In other words, it's like going into debt every 80 years and breaking the treasury that has been built up for good government. So all the money that is built up for good government actually gets wasted by the usage of war. And then hence the nation becomes broke every 80 years. So that thesis seems to stay pretty good with this pattern that I've showed you, but then you must ask some questions like, what about the other intervening wars, such as Spanish-American War, World War I, Korea, Vietnam. Now, what I'd like to propose to my listener is that the reason the 80-year cycle begins to get broken up or added to is because the population of the United States has been growing. So the more people that you have, the greater debt that you need to impose upon them. So as time goes on, more wars are needed because the population is growing significantly. Hence, everyone is born into a huge debt that's placed upon them as a worker. Now, this video is just trying to stay with the 80-year war theme, but basically it's about bankrupting the treasury of the U.S. so that it is constantly in a state of bankruptcy and constantly imposing upon a generation an enormous debt to pay off a war that may have been held long before even they were born. So when you are born, you are given a birth certificate, and in that birth certificate, you then get registered with a number, a Social Security number, and you become a corporation. Now, there's many out there with good videos on this. Your name will always appear in capital letters, and that is because that capital letter individual, which is really a false individual, represents you. It's not really you. But everything that you own or think you own has capital letters on it. And that's because that is a corporation. And a corporation is just simply a corpse with an oration. A corpse that talks. In other words, it is something that's like a person, but it's not really a person, body, soul, and spirit. So you, whether you know it or not, you are a corpse with an oration. You are a corporation. And when you are born and you enter into later on the workforce, this big, enormous war debt from a war that was probably held long before you were born has been placed upon you as a worker. And hence, we are all paying off these huge debts for these hoaxes that have been placed upon us because others in the past have made enormous sums of money producing all the arms and all the equipment and everything to go out and fight these so-called wars, which basically are, as Dave J. would say, strategic relocation and demolition and migration, sort of almost like gypsies migrating from place to place, or Boy Scouts out camping and moving place to place. So basically those three things comprise what we know in these wars that are fought. But the enormous debt that is created has been placed upon you. So the question is, when is the next one? And most likely, if you add it up from 1941 add the 80, you will get 2021, that something will occur. Now, many of YouTubers are postulating about aliens. Recently has been announced that there's going to be a space force to join the quote armed forces. It's not just going to be the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, and the Marines, but we'll add one more. That is our space soldiers. So maybe that's where the next war is coming, to the skies, as we see an awful lot of strange activity occurring in the skies with the so-called chemtrails, or they might be electrical trails, not really chemical, and most likely they are just simply drones that look like jets or airplanes, but they're really just drones. And when you look up, you think you're seeing a jet or an airplane, but you're not. It's just a drone that is designed to look like an airplane or a jet. So who knows just exactly how things are going to go over, but be aware that there is an 80-year war cycle, and that 80-year war cycle may be due here in the year 2021, and that might be a significant year to have some type of another strange war occurring and place another enormous debt on the heads of these corporations, which are basically you and me, and then we spend our whole lifetimes paying off these strange debts that we have no idea that we're actually paying off, because the treasuries have been busted and broke and bankrupt. I believe that the nation that we live in the United States, I believe that we're in about our fourth bankruptcy of the Treasury of the United States. So I'm not too sure of that, but I think it's about the fourth one when everything gets busted because of these wars, and every single penny is used to pay for these wars, and then the next generation goes into debt again. It's a cycle that goes over and over and over and over again. So be aware that the 80-year war cycle is real, and that the 80-year war cycle has been expanded, I believe, because the population has expanded. Hence, that would explain the different other wars that I did not mention in there, such as World War I, such as Korea, such as Vietnam. All those enter into it because the population of U.S. has been growing over the years, and hence we need more debt, more than just simply the 80-year war cycle. I hope this has been helpful to you. This is War Backwards is Raw, and I want you to be aware that the world is run by the evil one, the devil, and the devil has many names, and this is the one name that I've chosen for this channel. His name is Ra, R-A, or R-A-W. War Backwards is Raw.